Hello, it's me Rachel again, this time coming to you from my small little garden studio, which I've, after 4 years of not doing anything in here, I finally finished off a piece that I started 4 years ago. That was just before my waking up from the tower, the watchtower. So finally I feel like I'm being able to get on with other things in my life. So that's good news. And the recent earthquakes that we had and are still having in New Zealand, although the aftershocks have tapered off rather quickly, nothing in my studio was broken or tipped over, so that's really good. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about today is the matter of loving others, neighbourly love. And we know that Jesus said that this is the second greatest commandment, that we love our neighbours as ourselves. Jesus gave a good illustration to show just what a neighbour is, and everyone should know the story of the Good Samaritan, or the neighbourly Samaritan, in which case we see that a Jew was travelling a hilly road and was robbed by thugs and left on the side of the road to die. Anyway, we see that I think it was either 2 or 3 Jews walked past. It was a Jewish man who'd been mugged. They just walked straight on by. They had better things to do. And it was the Samaritan man who actually stopped and tended to the wounds of this man as best he could, then took him down to the nearest town and paid the innkeeper there to look after the man, and promised that he would come back and repay the innkeeper for any further expenses that were required to get this man better again. So Jesus' audience, when he gave this illustration, were Jews, and the Jews pretty much despised the Samaritans. They didn't believe the same as them. Perhaps they viewed them as apostates even. So Jesus could easily have made the point about who was a good neighbour by getting one of the fellow Jews to tend to this man's wounds, but he didn't. He chose to hold up the Samaritan man as the one who was being the good neighbour, and who was in fact a model for Jesus' fellow Jews, his audience, and also for Christians since that time and to today. So I really like this illustration, because it shows how Jesus, and obviously his father Jehovah, they see and they recognise the good in people. There's that lovely scripture that says that if Jehovah was just looking for the things wrong in a human being, then none of us would stand. We'd all fall flat. So he looks for the good, and he recognises the good. Like we see in the case of Cornelius in the Christian Greek scriptures, how it says that his prayers and his gifts of mercy were recognised by Jehovah. So he was a man, he wasn't a Jew, he obviously had learned something about Jehovah, but Jehovah recognised the good in this man, and he saw the gifts of mercy that he was performing for Jews. So he's obviously very kind towards them, and so Jehovah sees that. The problem that I have with, while I was a witness, and we'd be out in the ministry, and we would meet lots and lots of people of different religions, lots of people of different Christian denominations, but no matter how good they were, how much, some of these people were very, very kind and lovely, sincere people, but we would always find them deficient. There was something in them that we were there to fix, that they didn't have the truth, and we needed to fix them. And we were taught that a person would respond to our message if they had the 3 H's. If they were honest, if they were hungry for the truth, and if they were humble, that is, teachable. So we would assume that if ones didn't respond to our preaching, perhaps after sustained efforts to try and reason with them, we would determine that they weren't honest, they weren't hungry for truth, they didn't care about truth, and they weren't humble or teachable. But that's a dreadful way to view others, really, isn't it? You know, Jesus also said that we should treat others the way we would like to be treated. Now, how do we feel when someone attributes bad motives to us, perhaps? Like, yeah, you're doing something that's really good, a kind deed for someone else, and others will say that you've got selfish motive. You know, it's not. I don't think it's very loving to think about people like that, but that's what we do all the time when we were witnessing and meeting people in the territory. Like I had and everyone can probably think of lovely return visits that they've had that they haven't really got anywhere with, as far as bringing them into the truth. I had this lovely elderly gentleman who was about 90, who was a Catholic, and he used to pray the Our Father prayer every night for each one of his children. And you know, as a witness, you're conditioned to think, oh, you know, that's silly. Repetition of prayers, he won't be heard for the repetition of many words. I can't remember that scripture that we used to use, and that he didn't have the understanding of the Our Father prayer correct, and he, you know, all these things wrong, but we would overlook the motive behind it. Like, he obviously loved his children. It was wonderful that he thought of them each every day enough to pray in their behalf. So I mean, that was a lovely thing to do, really. And try as I may, I couldn't get him to come round to any of our witness understandings. And his wife, of course, she was in her 80s, lovely lady, and she, even though being very old and suffering from ill health herself, she had some kind of breathing or lung disorder. One year she made 12 Christmas cakes for her neighbours. Now, some would, you know, witness would think, oh, you know, it's terrible, false religion, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, how lovely. An elderly lady, you know, limited resources, bought all these ingredients, slaved away in the kitchen, because those cakes take a long time to prepare and bake, to distribute these cakes to people in her neighbourhood. And she would also keep an eye on who was having babies in her street, and she would knit booties and just do so many lovely things like this. Yet, witnesses have to believe that these people, just because they don't accept Jehovah's Witnesses' understandings of the scriptures, that these ones are condemned by God. They are judged, they are weeds, collected, bundled for the fire, as the July 2013 Watchtower study stated. I know another magazine, probably, I think it might have been the following year, talked about those in the churches as not being capable of any good. So that's really disturbing, and I think witnesses today who have an expectation that Armageddon is going to happen any time now, their cognitive dissonance must be really kicking in, because these people that they see that are loving and kind, but any day now Jehovah's going to destroy them. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. If you're a witness watching this, can you please comment and tell me how you feel about this? Does it disturb you as it did me? Okay, bye.